All right, so the book which we were reading last class, which we're talking about this class because I can't keep numbers straight, is the book where you get the light is shed on all the mysteries about Dimitri's the money. Where did he get the money, or at least according to his mouth? So one of the questions to keep in mind as you read this is Dimitri to be believed? Is he telling the truth? And it's worthwhile to just keep in mind that one of the big questions of the novel, and one of the questions that is going to come up towards the end specifically, is how can you tell if someone's telling the truth? Can you tell if someone's telling the truth? Is external evidence sufficient to settle the matter of whether or not someone's telling the truth? And if you did find out that someone was telling the truth via external, as it's repeated over and over again in here, material evidence, does that necessitate that you automatically miss something significant about the truth, given that you had to come to it through this like extraction method? Maybe you get the material truth, but you miss the real underlying meaning of it. It's kind of maybe analogous to the person who thinks they need to really unpack the original language of Scripture if they want to understand the meaning of the words and this and that. By doing that, maybe you do get to the heart of the material assertions, but maybe in that whole process, because the spirit that's taken to get that understanding, maybe it blinds you to the real meaning of the words in the first place. Does that make sense? So that you kind of think, oh, the meaning of this is, and then you say something historical because it was rooted in this culture, this and that and that. There might be something true about that, but it could turn out that knowing the truth in one way makes you miss the real underlying meaning of the truth. The truth of the truth would be another way to put it, I think, to use a Balthazarian terminology. Okay, so where did Dimitri get the money, according to him? Katerina. Yeah. Going way back. Let's redo the whole scene, because I think it's important to say where the money ultimately originated, and I think to understand what's the meaning of the money. Why does the money matter for Dimitri? Why does it matter for Dimitri? It matters for the prosecutors because they're trying to figure out, was the money that Dimitri has the money that was for Fyodor's little chicken? And they're trying to like pin the murder on Dimitri. But for Dimitri, he's not trying to get out of the murder. In one sense, Dimitri doesn't even care about the murder and whether or not the things he says leads to him being thought to be the murderer, which is, he needs a lawyer, right? Like he's digging himself into a hole. But part of the whole point of this, I think, is that Dimitri, at least in his eyes, he seems to be so innocent of the fact that he's so innocent because he thinks he's so innocent, right? It's like, I'm innocent of this, so like anything I say or anything that can happen, it's not gonna like be able to like prove me guilty because I know that I'm innocent. And it's as if like he says all these things that make all these arrows point towards him, but he's like, but they don't point towards me because I didn't do it. And it's like, well, tell that to all this material evidence that's pointing towards you. But that's why I think he's just so willing to say things that really are like convicting him in a way, right? Because he believes himself to be so innocent. Okay, so the money. Here's what happens. Dimitri doesn't care about the murder of Fyodor. I mean, he cares about it, but he's not invested in trying to prove himself one way or the other about that, at least right now. Here's the story. I won't write it on the board. I'll just remind you. So the beginning of the whole thing was Katerina's dad stole a bunch of money. Really, stole. What's the kind of? It's small difference, but right, he took it to do this gambling. He's going to pay it back. Turns out sometimes the thing about gambling is you don't always win, and so he lost the money, and he was going to be shamed publicly, put in prison, yada yada yada, right? The whole 9 yards, and Katerina doesn't want that to happen, and Dimitri sort of thinks Katerina is a Russian beauty, and so he says, "Hey, you can have 3,000 if you come be my friend," and it's sort of like very offensive, obviously. And what happens is Katerina realizes she wants to save her dad, and so she goes to Dimitri. Dimitri, remember this scene? He's like, he has this Karamazov thought, and then at the other hand, he's like, no, and then he's not sure what he's going to do. Gives her the money and tells her to, opens the door, and she says, you can go. And she bows, the great Russian bow. Do you remember that? Okay, and what at that stage, at that checkpoint in the story, Katerina feels completely 100% indebted to Dimitri. Dimitri, in the eyes of Katerina, is her superior, her savior. She saved him. Nothing in return. And I think what we kind of see in Katerina from the earlier exchanges is that she can't stand that someone else saved her, that Dmitri Karamazov saved her, at least in this way, right? And so I think this is why she, interestingly, asks Dmitri, later on after they get engaged, asks Dmitri, hey, will you send my relatives in Moscow these 3,000 rubles? And Dimitri even points out in this chapter why she couldn't send it herself, only God knows. But I think the reason that she asked Dimitri to send the 3,000 is because, if you're filling in the writing between the lines, is because she knew he was going to spend it. And then the tables would turn, and now Dimitri would be indebted to Katerina. Does that make sense? She would not be the inferior. She would not feel that her life is due to someone else's sacrifice. She wants her life and her greatness to come from her virtue, not from the sacrifice of someone else, but from her own virtue. And that's why my reading of it, and this is, I only picked this up this time reading the novel, which I think, I was trying to count, I think this is like the 6th time. So even the 6th time, you'll still get stuff out of it. So read it at least 2 times. Okay, so I think she wants Dimitri to be in debt to her, whereas prior to that, she's in debt to Dimitri. Does that make sense? Okay, and I think Dimitri knows this, which is why he gets it, and he's like, darn it, why do I have to have this 3,000 from her now? It's as if she was trying to tempt me into squandering this and now being in debt to her. And she was like, but I can't not blow this on my new love Drushenka and Makroya, because the champagne just tastes so much better in Makroya, and Drushenka's shiny cheeks they're a little more shiny in Makroya, and it's like, I just can't not be a Karamazov and go squander all this money. And he knows that he doesn't want to do that, because ultimately, I think of that initial action of his sacrifice to her, right? Does that remember where he completely gave the 3,000, which was his father's inheritance? Because I think this ultimately comes back to this meaning, and he completely is willing to just give it away without any sense of return. And now it's as if he's trying to collect interest on that action, right? And so I think that's why he feels like he's a scoundrel, because he's taken this money from Katerina and has squandered it again, but in a completely different way, a selfish way, whereas prior to that it was in a selfless way. But he knows that he doesn't want to be a scoundrel, and there's actually two things at stake here. So what does he do with the money? This is all in the words of Dimitri. We can ask maybe why they're not. It's not U.S. dollars, so I shouldn't use that sign. I don't know what the ruble sign is, so we'll just go like that. That's what apparently was given by Katerina to give to the relatives, Dimitri takes the money, and what does he do? Half of it he puts in a little package, sewed up. He wraps it up and sews it up in a little tiny purse around his neck, money pouch, little tiny little. And it's like he's like going to Europe, and he doesn't want people to steal his money, so he like wraps it in a little money purse and puts it in, and no one knows about it. Okay, and then what does he do? We'll call it Mitya's purse, right? And then the other half, what does he do? Party, right? Okay. And what does he do the first time in Makroya when he is there and he's blowing all this money? What does he tell all the people? How much is he spending? He says he's spending 3,000. Why he does this? I haven't. It'll take the seventh read, I think, to really like put all the pieces together. Maybe you can think about it. He over and over and over and over again. Dimitri keeps saying he's spending 3,000. And it has something to do with the fact that that's the original amount. Maybe that's what he wants to spend. That's what he like deep down thinks he knows he's actually going to spend. I don't know. But
well, like if he only spent 1,500, wouldn't Katerina like learn about that somehow? Did he only spend 1,500? He was like, I was spending 1,500, so she knows that he would still have the 1,500.
Yeah. So his plan was to split it and to say like, yeah, I'm a Karamazov. I partied. But here, look, I'm not a complete loser, and so his part of his goal in splitting this was that he could at least say, not you're inferior. I don't have at least a complete debt to you, and I think that the hope is it at least symbolizes that he has the willingness to make good on this. He's not completely going to turn his back and run away and just say, yeah, the rest of your life you're going to know that you've made this great sacrifice for me and I completely blew it and went away. That he can at least kind of I think it symbolizes that he's not so good. He's not so beyond the scope of the Karamazov nature that he's gonna save the whole thing and give the whole thing to the relatives because he's like, look, I'm a Karamazov. I got to do a little bit of partying, but at the same time, he's not such a Karamazov that he can just do that and not feel despicable because. Part of why he saves this is because he splits it is because he knows that Grushenka. I said it gets complicated. That Grushenka might someday say to Dimitri, this is Dimitri's dream, right? I'm done sort of playing around with you and Fyodor, and let's move away. Let's get married in the far ends of Russia, and we'll live the great dream together. And Dimitri thinks, how can I leave with some ties to the past? I think that's the basic idea, is like having some ties to Katerina, or having gone with a sense of an indebtedness to the thing that I'm leaving. Like I can't start a new life knowing that I'm still indebted to something in the past. Does that make sense? It's kind of probably analogous to if you do something that makes you feel guilty, like you can't go forward and just try to start over without in some ways really confronting that initial thing that made you feel guilty and making good on that in some way. Doesn't mean making it undone, perhaps, but somehow making good of that situation. You can't just run from it and ignore it. At least that's the Mitya spirit. And so he knows that there's this hope, and so he holds on to this with the sake that this is like the 1,500 in his pouch is the physical like incarnation of his dream, the possibility of his dream. I can hold on to this. I can make good on me being a scoundrel. I can kind of repay it in a way. And I can start a new life on new ground without being indebted to the past. Does that kind of make sense? Questions about that situation? And I think to try to put yourself in Dimitri's mindset and Katerina's mindset, I think you can. It probably, unfortunately, just gets clearer and clearer as you get older and older, and you like screw things up more and more. And you find yourself, oh yeah, I think I know what Dimitri is talking about. I think I know what Katerina is talking about, because I feel myself more like them as I get older. But here's one instance of this at a kind of lower level. Someone comes and they help you move. You're leaving it. Your house. You're leaving Atchison. Somebody comes and helps you move, and at a certain point you realize, man, they're sacrificing a lot of their day to do this, and you kind of feel bad that they're making such a great sacrifice for you, and it's almost as if you don't want to feel that they are giving you so much, because it's like it's causing them so much burden, and part of what might be at the mix of it is you don't want to feel that you just are in such great need of them at their expense. It would be kind of like, I need help with something, so I call on Dr. Sienkiewicz to come help me, but it's kind of like, well, you waste your time with your family so you can help me have more time with my family. I kind of feel a little bad about asking him to do that, right? Because I'm now kind of putting him in this sense of indebtedness, or I'm now indebted to him. And so oftentimes the things that we do, which can be seen as acts of charity, are actually ways of thinking about each other as being indebted to other people. And it actually causes this inferiority, superiority, or slave and master dynamic, which Zosima talks about in his dreams, right? The idea of the servants and the masters. And I think it kind of manifests in this way with acts of charity. It can interestingly be ways of like proving ourselves as superior to other people. Even if we don't really know that, sometimes the guilt in receiving other people's acts of charity, we're resistant to that. Why are we resistant to that? Because we think we don't really need it at your expense that much. And it's an interesting way to think about why are we hesitant to receive other people's acts of charity. It's, at least for my own my own context or my own life, it's like, because sometimes I don't know if they really think of it as charity. At least my interpretation, is probably a false interpretation, is that it's not really an act of charity. It's just you're trying to prove to me something about your awesomeness, and I don't want to feel like I'm being used so that you can prove yourself as an awesome person. But that's probably a misunderstanding. At the very least, I've already tainted the waters. I've already destroyed that situation as a possibility for an act of love, just in how I'm perceiving it. Okay, anyway, that's a little bit of the kind of, I think, some of the psychological, moral background of this situation, the plot development. Okay, questions about that? That's kind of the real big insight over these bunch of pages. Dimitri's questioned right and left, but that we don't have to go into the details unless you want to. Any questions about any of this stuff? I want to spend time talking about why are the wee ones? Why are the children weeping? Why do they weep? Why don't they hug each other? Right? That the dream, Dimitri's dream. I want to talk about that. And then I want to talk about the thing he says right after his dream, because I think they're really important for the novel. For Dostoevsky, I think this is like the heart of all Dostoevsky novels. Right. It's actually a retelling, a different version of. I think Lizzie read it. Maybe you didn't, but we talked about it on Saturday. The Dream of the Ridiculous Man, which is a short story of Dostoevsky, kind of taking this little bit and condensing it. Not this, but the story with the dream, Dimitri's dream. So, anyway, very significant part of the whole book, and you see once again the significant parallel between Dimitri and Zosima. Right? I think this is where it really comes to the fore. You really see it clearly. Good. Comments, questions before we jump into the dream? Everyone ready? The dream. Okay, this is one of my favorite parts of the whole novel. Okay, this is how it goes. This is on page 507 of the Peever translation. It is right before chapter 9. Okay, right before chapter 9. It's worth reading, so I'm just going to read most of this. Dimitri was up all night partying with Grushenka and all these people, slightly tipsy, and he's been really exhausted with all these questions. He just poured out his heart and his soul to these investigators, and they kind of just abused that in a way, and he's really exhausted. Anyway, what happens is he falls asleep. Okay, he was asleep in a second. He had a strange sort of dream, somehow entirely out of place and out of time, which the way I think Dostoevsky thinks about dreams is that they're kind of like universal. It's like an insight into the universal truths of things through particular context, and that's why there's a type of absurdity, so that it can draw out like the universal meaning that will then help you to see that universal meaning when you wake up in the particular context that you're in. So dreams are always revelatory. They tell you something about the meaning that goes deeper than the plot. You can understand the plot, but you don't understand the meaning of the plot. And what a dream does is it helps you to like go down to the meaning which lies below the plot. You have to pass to a different world outside of time and space to kind of cut below the meaning of the plot. So here's how it goes. Okay, and it seems that Mitya that he is cold. This is in his dream. It is the beginning of November. The snow is pouring down in big wet flakes that melt as soon as they touch the ground. And the peasant is driving briskly, waving his whip nicely. He has a long, fair beard, and he is not an old man, maybe about 50, like think Dr. Rich's, dressed in a gray peasant coat. And there is a village nearby, black huts, and half of the huts are burnt, just charred beams sticking up. And at the edge of the village, there are peasant women standing along the road, many women, a long line of them, all of them thin, wasted, their faces a sort of brown color, especially that one at the end, such a bony one, tall, looking as if she were 40, but she may be only 20, with a long, thin face. And in her arms, a baby is crying. And her breasts must be all dried up, not a drop of milk in them. And the baby is crying, reaching out its bare little arms, its little fists somehow all blue from the cold. Why are they crying? Why are they crying? Mitya asks, flying past them at a great clip. The wee one, the driver answers. It's the wee one crying. And Mitya is struck that he has said it in his own peasant way. The wee one, and not the baby. And he likes it that the peasant has said the wee one. There seems to be more pity in it. Right? This is very important idea for me, for all of us, but for Dostoevsky. There's more pity in calling the child a wee one. And what's the point of pity? What's the point of this? Why is pity good? Why is it good to feel pity towards something? And how do you feel pity towards something? But why is it crying, Mitya insists, as if he were foolish. Why are its little arms bare? Why don't they wrap it up? The wee one's cold. Its clothes are frozen. They don't keep it warm. And then Mitya persists. But why is it so? Why? Foolish Mitya will not leave off. They're poor, burnt out. They've got no bread. They're begging for their burnt down place. No, Mitya still seems not to understand. Tell me, why are these burnt out mothers standing here? Why are there poor people? Why is the wee one poor? Why is the steppe bare? Why don't they embrace and kiss? Why don't they sing joyful songs? Why are they blackened with the black misery? Why don't they feed the wee one? And he feels within himself, oh, did we talk about what Karamazov means? Did we talk about what Karamazov means? Wait, have we gotten there yet? Yeah, I think we did get there. We did get there. It was when, I'm going to continue the dream in a second. This is a dream from a dream. When Alyosha goes to the captain's house, and the wife of the captain says, the captain's introducing Alyosha and says, oh, this is Mr. Karamazov. And she says, oh, whatever, some version of Karamazov, but it's not literally that. And so it's kind of Karamazov's kind of a slightly twisted form of a phrase, of a word that means like the black stain or the black mark, right? Which kind of sounds like original sin. Okay, so I probably shouldn't have skipped that. But why are they blackened with such black misery? Why don't they feed the wee one? And he feels within himself that though his questions have no reason or sense, he still certainly wants to ask it in just that way. And he should ask it in just that way. And he also feels a tenderness such as he has never known before, surging up in his heart. So this is important. So he feels this great question, these great questions, due to the pitiful state of these people, the suffering of these people. He just feels, it's like these people are really pulling at his heart and really tormenting him. No answer to the question, why are they suffering, is satisfying him, and he just suffers all the more because of that. And then he feels, I'll read it again because it's such a great line. He also feels a tenderness such as he has never known before, surging up in his heart. He wants to weep. He wants to do something for them all, so that the wee one will no longer cry, so that the blackened, dried up mother of the wee one will not cry either, so that there will be no more tears in anyone from that moment on, and it must be done at once, without delay, and despite everything, with all his Karamazov unrestrained. The Garnett translation is with all the recklessness of a Karamazov, right? So this is why I think Dimitri is such, as we were talking about last time, is such a great figure, is because he has this capacity within him, both on the one hand to fly to Makroya and completely squander his life away, but it's also what makes him capable of, and this is what I was saying on the other hand, of doing something without restraint, completely throwing himself, like he's feeling this desire to completely throw himself to these weeping children, these weeping mothers, and it's what's drawing him to them is their pity. It's their or the pity that he has for them. It's their suffering that's like calling him. Okay, and then he hears, I'm with you, I won't leave you now, I'll go with you for the rest of my life. The dear, deeply felt words of Grushenka come from somewhere. His whole heart blazed up, and he turned towards some sort of light, and he wanted to live and go on and on along some path towards a new beckoning light, and to hurry right now at once. Okay, and then what happens? He wakes up, and what does he see? What does he feel? Maybe he sees it too, but what does he feel? He feels a pillow. And why is this significant? It suddenly struck him that there was a pillow under his head, which, however, had not been there when he had sunk down powerlessly on the chest. Why is this significant? Well, put yourself in the context of this situation of Dimitri. He just went through this examination, this public examination, stripped of his clothes. He says things. Everything he says, it's as if it's giving evidence that he is a murderer, a parricide, if you will, right? Now, whether he actually is a murderer is one question, but everything he's saying, all the evidence that's coming on the scene is pointing to the fact that he's a murderer, right? Does that make sense? And it's as if everyone there, except for Grushenka, right? Everyone else thinks he is right, a murderer. Everyone thinks he's a murderer, and yet nevertheless, this is like really interesting. He wakes up and there's a pillow under his head. Someone gave a murderer a pillow, right? This is the what Dimitri, I think, sees in the pillow. The pillow smells like something. What does the pillow smell like? An onion. Yeah, it smells exactly like an onion. Now that's not, you won't find that in the book. You had to have been there. This is an onion. This is Dimitri's onion. Someone gave him an onion. I'm guilty in their eyes, and someone still gave me a pillow. Right? Someone has done something good to me. And this is an amazing insight for Dimitri. Who put that pillow under my head? What good person did it? He exclaimed with a sort of rapturous gratitude in a sort of tear-filled voice. Why would you get so excited for having a pillow under your head? Because the pillow means something more, right? As though God knows what kindness has been shown me, right? It's as if this action of giving the pillow means something to Dimitri and Dimitri alone. It means something of like infinite worth for Dimitri. Okay, so I think this is a really important moment right after this dream. It's really important that it's right after this dream. He wants to do something, that is, Dimitri wants to do something for all these suffering people, and what happens? He wakes up, and someone has done something for him. Someone gave a guy who's more or less like convicted himself of murder, whether he actually did it or not. It's kind of an interesting thing for someone to like give evidence against themselves. Right, but he comes to that awareness that nevertheless someone still gave this guy a pillow. And only God knows the kindness that was shown him. The good man remained unidentified. Right, this is important. No one knows who it was. Perhaps it was one of the witnesses. All the witnesses like testified against Dimitri. Okay, but his whole soul was as if shaken with tears. He went up to the table and declared that he would sign whatever he wanted. It's as if at this point it becomes so clear for Dimitri. The point is to suffer, right? What I need to do is I need to suffer. It's not to try to hold on to my life, but to lose it. I had a good dream, gentlemen, he said, somehow strangely, with a sort of new face, as if lit up with joy. Remember, Alyosha wakes up from his little dream, the wedding of Cana dream. It's kind of a hallucination dream type of thing. And what's his response to the earth, to the sufferings of the earth? He wants to like hug it, hold it, fall upon it, weep it, and have his tears be what like nourishes it and gives it life. And this is precisely, it looks like, what is the response of Asia to the earth now. Okay, we got time. This is great. This is why you should always begin with the end. That way you don't run out of time. Okay. So, who earlier in the novel says something similar to, or sees something similar to what Dimitri sees or experiences about wee ones, the babes? Ivan's rebellion. If you go back to the rebellion chapter, here's someone else who's tormented by the suffering of children. So tormented by the suffering of children that he can't stand it. Something needs to change. There's something intolerable with that. And so in the rebellion chapter, you get Ivan, and Ivan can't tolerate the wee one's suffering, and he throws the blame of this upon who? What person is blamed for all the suffering of these wee ones, or maybe persons, Trinity of persons? Yeah. It's thrown on God, and it's as if Ivan is throwing the blame on God for orchestrating this world of suffering. And it's to see that the problem of the wee ones, the problem of suffering, is external to Ivan. And it's really, I think it's to see that the problem as external to Ivan as God. It's to see somehow God is external to Ivan himself. Like God is sort of apart from his creation, from you. And so if the problem is external, then the solution to the problem is going to have to be external for Ivan. And that's why you then get the Grand Inquisitor, who's kind of like this attempt to give an externalized solution to the problem of suffering. You can get rid of all suffering, only if you, and then you get this great dream, and we won't rehash the Grand Inquisitor, but the real reason people suffer is because of their conscience. And if we could just get rid of their conscience, in a way, they wouldn't suffer as much. Or if we got rid of their freedom, they wouldn't suffer as much. And so Ivan is trying to give a response to the suffering of children, innocent suffering, because he sees it as somehow due to God. And if we could rebel against God, we could get rid of the suffering sort of wrought by God's design. Where Dimitri, Ivan's brother, right? They're both Karamazovs, and I think because they're both Karamazovs, they both find the suffering of children intolerable. They can't bear it. Something must be done about this. But it's not an external thing for Dimitri. And this is where you see Ivan is like Zosima, but maybe times 10. And you might think, how is Ivan, or sorry, not Ivan, Dimitri Zosima, but like times 10. How is this the case? Look at chapter 9. It's like, I don't know, maybe 2 paragraphs in chapter 9. After he wakes up, they say, okay, Dimitri Karamazov, you're being arrested for the murder of your father. We're taking you away, going to put you in prison, yada, yada, yada. And they're reading him all this and that. The way the narrator puts it, it's like, this is going to happen because you're that, and the so-and-so, and this. And it's as if all that stuff just doesn't matter for Dimitri. And then here's what he does after all this. He stands up, he jumps up, and he says, wait! Mitya interrupted suddenly, and with some irrepressible feeling, he spoke, addressing everyone in the room. So he makes this public pronouncement, this public address, not probably terribly too far from the mysterious visitor, right? Gentlemen, we are all cruel. We are all monsters. We all make people weep. Mothers and nursing babes. The dream, right? The dream is here. Who's responsible for this? Dimitri's realizing we all are. And then he doubles down. He says, no, wait a second. That's not perhaps entirely right. Even though maybe we all are, but all, let it be settled here and now, of all, I am the lowest vermin. So be it. Every day of my life, I have been beating my breast and promising to reform. Think about the number of times you've sort of woken saying, today is going to be a different day. Today I'll be a virtuous person. Every day of my life I've been beating my breast and promising to reform, and every day I've done the same vile things. I understand now that for men such as I, a blow is needed, a blow of fate, to catch them as with a noose and bind them by an external force. Never, never would I have risen by myself. So Dimitri did rise. Dimitri's undergoing, I think at this moment you kind of see some form of resurrection, although it's going to be kind of drawn out over a long period of time. He's undergoing some new life, some new resurrection, but it's only through, as he puts it, a noose, right? Like there's something that he's realizing he's the one that's been responsible for why the babes are weeping. Why are they weeping? It's because of Dimitri, right? He's responsible for it, and I think he's come to this realization, and I think perhaps even gratitude. He's thankful. He even says it that he's been caught by God as if by a noose. It's like the what is it? Francis Thompson poem? Is that The Hound of Heaven? Is that Is that Thompson?
Yeah.
Yeah, like God's like hunting us. He's and you get in a lot of Dostoevsky novels, you get like these chase scenes. Certainly in Crime and Punishment, you get the investigators chasing, trying to hunt this person down, pin them, get a hold of them. And I think what you see is like this is kind of like what it is to be a Karamazov, to be like hunted, chased by God. And finally what's happened, I think Dimitri says, is he's been caught. God has thrown the noose around me. But it's kind of like it's a strange image, morbid image. Don't think about it too much. So it's like a noose around Dimitri, and God's like pulling him up out of death with the noose. The noose is like what's causing him to like be pulled out of his own death. Okay, so he said, I would never have risen by myself. Remember, I said the Republic is this great book for those that can like maintain the order of their life, but for those that have already lost the order of their lives and they've already like made themselves unjust, how do they get this reordering? How do they get this rebirth, this new life, once you've already kind of corrupted it? Because you can think about loss of order or justice as a type of all the parts break down. Once all the parts break down, the body dies, right? The soul dies when it kind of corrupts itself. So how do you get this new life? And Dimitri, it comes to this realization. It could have been through my own doing. It had to have come from another. It's not possible for me to have risen by myself, right? And then this is a beautiful line which I just got this time reading as well, because I read the end note. So if you have this edition and you don't read the end notes, you should, because there's like gems. Dimitri says, "But thunder has struck." Right? I never would have risen by myself, but thunder has struck. And the reference in that end note is to this peasant Russian proverb that not Dimitri. Dostoevsky had known. He wrote to his editor about this little proverb, and he said that this was really like this influential thing for him, this proverb. And the proverb goes, "Unless thunder strikes, a peasant won't cross himself." Right. So it's like if it's a nice sunny day, the peasant won't cross himself. Thunder's got to strike. Death's got to be knocking on the door. And so he recognizes that, and then he goes on to say, "I accept the torment of accusation and of my disgrace before all. I want to suffer and be punished by suffering. And perhaps I will be punished, gentlemen? I will be purified." And he wants to be purified by suffering, so I misread that. Purified. "But hear me all the same, for the last time, I am not guilty of my Father's blood." This should bring you back to those passages in the gospel about he who is angry with his brother has committed murder. "I accept punishment not because I killed him, but because I wanted to kill him and might well have killed him. But even so, I intend to fight you, and I am letting you know it. I will fight you to the very end, and then let God decide." And he goes on. Right. So I think this is Dimitri's realization of how justice comes. It comes through death, and a death that is this not like a physical death, but it's this death that you, in some ways, are a murderer. Like Dimitri in one sense is saying, I know I didn't commit the murder, but in another sense, I deserve the murderer's punishment. Even though I didn't do the murder, in some ways I deserve it. I'm the one that's responsible for why the wee ones are weeping, right? And the way that he can make good on the suffering that he's caused the wee ones is for him to suffer for them, right? Okay, and we'll see more of this in the next couple pages. But I want to point out one more interesting parallel that you'll only get if you read the book like 2 or 3 times. I'm giving you that on the cheap, so I hate to deprive you of the glory of finding this on your own. But earlier on, if you flip back to, it's much earlier in the book. If you have this Peaver translation, it's on 224. It's in the chapter Smerdyakov with a guitar. I'll just read it. if you have a different edition, just listen. You can go track it later. It's when Smerdyakov is talking about his mother, stinking Lisaveta, and how everyone used to like have this pity for her and say, oh, she's just a wee bit tall, and oh, she's just a wee thing, and oh, look at the... And he's like, this, I hate this. It's so disgusting that they talk of her like this, and they talk this way, these stupid peasants. And here's what he says. Why say a wee bit when you can simply say a little, like everyone else? She wanted to make it tearful, but those are peasant tears, miss, so to speak. Those are real peasant tears. Can a Russian peasant have feelings comparable to an educated man? Like, can a peasant really have the high like moral feelings of an educated man? With such a lack of education, he can't have any feelings at all. Ever since my childhood, whenever I hear this wee bit, I want to throw myself at the wall. I hate all of Russia. Yada yada yada. There's certainly a parallel. How do you see the wee ones? How do you see the ones that are pitiful? How do you respond to that? Does it completely break you down so that you want to devote your life to them, or does it completely break you down and like hate them and despise them? It's also interesting to note Dimitri has this mixed relationship with the suffering of children. Ivan has a mixed relation with the suffering of children. And who was bitten by a child and suffers greatly because of a child? Alyosha. And the next chapter, or the next book in the novel is called The Boys. And so we return once again to the wee ones. So this is certainly a theme. The suffering of children is at the heart of resurrection.